Hello and welcome back to the VolReport Show. I'm Ryan Sylvia with VolReport.com on the Rivals Network, and it's NC State game week. So we're doing our first opponent preview show of the season with Jacey Zembal of the WolfPackCentral, NC State's rival site on the network. So, Jacey, how are you doing?
I'm doing good.
All right, well, let's jump right into things. I think a lot of Tennessee fans made sure they tuned into the NC State game with the start or the game date different than Tennessee's. They had the opportunity to kind of do some scouting, and things maybe didn't necessarily go as planned for the Wolfpack against Western Carolina. Can you talk about that game and kind of maybe the feeling around the program after what probably I would at least assume was a game that didn't go as planned?
I would say the first three quarters definitely did not go as planned. NC State had a slow start, could have had a real fast start on one of the first few plays of the game. Linebacker Caden Fordham could have had a pick six to begin the game. And then Fordham, on the fifth play of the game, ends up getting ejected for targeting. He'll be back for Tennessee, but that did not bode well for the start of the game. Essentially, State had a few self-inflicted wounds. Western Carolina's quarterback is very good. He's the son of Florida's wide receiver coach, the quarterback himself, Cole Gonzalez. His dad is Billy Gonzalez, who's bounced around at many of the schools in the SEC. But Cole hurt him with his feet on one play, and he was very accurate, a little bit similar to Tennessee with an up-tempo offense, spread it around. But obviously a little not quite the same as Tennessee in terms of the talent he has around him. But he would be a very good Power 4 quarterback if he was at a different school. Like, he could have had that option. But the gist is, State found themselves trailing and ended up scoring three unanswered touchdowns in the fourth quarter. Ran the ball much better, wore them out a little bit. Tackled, cleaned up the penalties, looked more similar to the team that he thought was going into the game. More of the concerns are about NC State's defense maybe exiting the game than the offense. But quarterback Grayson McCall, he had some passes that he wishes he had back. He didn't have a pick six, but it acted like one where the Western Carolina player returned it to the 8-yard line, and then they scored on an 8-yard touchdown pass. So that was a gift. And then he had a couple other passes where if he just had a little better timing, got the receiver in stride, maybe it would have gone for big yardage. So, Dave Doran said after watching the film, a couple passes here and there, and he throws for over 400 yards. And, it's crazy, though, because after last year where the offense struggled so much at times to get any kind of play over 20 yards, just to see them throw the ball around and to pass the ball for over 300 yards, even that alone was a victory in itself of what the transfer portal could do to an offense, because it was quite the makeover this offseason.
Well, a big part of that offense, obviously, Kevin Concepcion. He goes for 121 yards, 3 touchdowns on 9 catches, building off a really impressive freshman campaign for him. Just what type of threat does he pose to defenses, and kind of what does he need to do to keep this ball rolling in the sophomore year?
Well, the beauty of Concepcion is he could pile up a large number of catches, but they're not all quite what I would call catches. So, for instance, he'll take a pop pass, or some people might call it a shuffle pass. And obviously that is nothing complex about it in terms of, execution, and he just goes in motion. He gets the ball, the ball's in the air for maybe less than a yard, and he takes it and he goes. And so he had 2 of those plays. One of them, I believe, was a touchdown. What makes him unique, though, is that he can really explode in and out of his cuts. He has great vision, great instincts. They didn't line him out of the backfield like they did last year at times, but it just showed, even last year, it showed that even at whatever he weighed, 170, 180 pounds, he still had the vision and to be able to make the cuts to pick up a 30-yard run, where the other backs on the team from last year's roster did not have that same vision, did not have the ability to do such things out of the backfield. So I would call him a volume receiver. It's not like they take a lot of shots to him, like 40, 50 yards downfield, though he could do it here and there. But he catches a lot of passes in that 8 to 15-yard range. And then if you don't tackle him, he will take off. I mean, I would call him slippery.
You mentioned a little bit of it earlier, but Grayson McCall now gets the reins of this offense after Brennan Armstrong, Virginia transfer, who was really, really good with Virginia, maybe didn't pan out to the elite level that some expected. What are the differences in this offense with Grayson McCall at the helm, and how did you see that on display in game one?
I think it's massive in a lot of different ways. Armstrong would have wanted to hurt you with his legs. Last year they were very comfortable running him anywhere from 10 to 20 times. McCall, because of his injury history or just being a veteran or playing Western Carolina, he doesn't want to take off as much probably as he might have when he was younger. It's not prudent for him to take excessive hits. He even did a baseball slide on one of his runs. So in theory, he ran the ball 5 times. So it's not as run dependent as it was last year with Armstrong. Between Armstrong and Concepcion lining him in the backfield, that was the running game. The running backs just weren't getting those kind of contributions. And because Concepcion was pretty much the lone receiver, basically it was Armstrong and Concepcion playing pitch and catch. And it worked down the stretch. I mean, it really was remarkable that they squeezed out everything they could from that offense. And some of it is maybe Wake Forest's defense wasn't the greatest, or Virginia Tech's defense wasn't the greatest. But they went from scoring in the low teens against, like, say, Louisville, a tougher defense, to scoring 25 plus points, whatever. So to me, like, Grayson McCall is that point guard, and his job is to spread it around. And Concepcion will probably lead the team in receptions, but Justin Jolie, good tight end, transfer from Connecticut. Noah Rogers, everybody wanted him out of high school. Wesley Grimes, everybody kind of nearly wanted him out of high school. Rogers transferred in from Ohio State. Grimes transferred in from Wake Forest. And then Dakari Collins is he's in the starting lineup at receiver as one of the few holdovers. Clemson transfer from the Atlanta area. And it's just a different receiving core. It's just now he has 5-6 options to throw to. The backs can catch the ball. Where last year's team just didn't have a tight end. They didn't have that second and third receiver.
You mentioned Justin Jolie. He's got some familiarity with Tennessee. With UConn last year, came to Knoxville and had a really nice game. Obviously, the team itself maybe fell behind the 8 ball pretty quickly and was on the wrong end of that score. But Justin Jolie himself had a really nice game. Maybe got himself on the radar of some Tennessee coaches and definitely the fan base. And there was a lot of buzz this offseason about a possible transfer to Tennessee before Tennessee takes in Notre Dame tight end Holden Stays. So a lot of Tennessee fans are pretty familiar with Justin Jolie, but just briefly, what's that kind of experience been like for him this offseason? What are the expectations for him? Second leading receiver against Western Carolina. Just what is his piece in this offense?
It's interesting that you bring up Holden Stays. So to put this story in a nice bow of transfer recruiting. So not that State really went after Holden Stays, but boy, did Holden Stays hurt NC State in their game last year for Notre Dame. He had 2 huge plays. Had a huge game against NC State. He looked like a future NFL tight end against NC State. So, I know that Tennessee did not use Holden Stays or threw the ball that much to him against Tennessee Chattanooga. But he showed, like he looked like a legit future NFL tight end. Jolie is put on good weight. They basically line him up as a receiver a lot of the time. He's good. I mean, he's just a really good, capable college tight end. And, I think he ended up with like 58 catches or 50 plus catches for UConn last year. And obviously UConn didn't have the greatest team in the world, but, I wouldn't be shocked if he averaged 5-6 catches a game for NC State. I just, he's just has a way of getting open. He's quicker and better off, with the ball in his hands than I thought he would be. and he's kind of like that security blanket. So between Jolie and Concepcion, they can really hit that 8 to 12 yard part of a defense. They know how to get open, and they know how to move the chains on third and say 5.
On the defensive side, is it right that it's 8 new starters on defense?
Yeah, that's what it was interesting. We don't. I never really thought of it that way, um, but I mean, it was brought up at the press conference today, by Coach Dave Doran, and I was like, I guess there are 8. It's just so many. The secondary is almost reworked. That part's been fascinating. So there's transfers at nickel and both one of the safety spots, and then and then there's backups that are transfers. So, and then you actually a cornerback transfer. They kind of played a lot of 6 DBs against Western Carolina. So Corey Cooley, for instance, from Maryland, played starter snaps. The linebackers were the concern going into the season because of the loss of Peyton Wilson, and then Jalen Scott was a solid college player his senior year. So two linebackers leave. They converted a safety, Sean Brown, to linebacker. Caden Fordham, who I'd mentioned, he gets ejected for targeting. And then the third starter is Devon Betty, who has started in the past, but has never had, a season where he's started all 12 games. So you have those 3 guys at linebacker. Davin Van is a multi-year starter at defensive end. Travali Price has always been in the rotation at defensive end, but first time being a starter. And then Brandon Cleveland, kind of, I don't know. I would say like maybe the CJ Clark last year at nose tackle would play like 60% of the snaps, and Cleveland would play 40, or some games it was more 50-50. Cleveland ended up starting in the bowl game when CJ Clark ended up transferring to Miami, Florida. So like Cleveland isn't a starter per se last year, but has enough experience where you could call him a starter.
Yeah, it sounds similar to Tennessee's defense in a lot of ways, where that secondary for Tennessee, I mean, the entire starting 5 in their nickel scheme is just, they're gone, whether it's graduation, the transfer portal, going to the NFL. It's a completely retooled secondary. So I think Tennessee fans can kind of relate to hearing some similarities between the two. From your perspective, though, what about Tennessee kind of gives you the most pause heading into this matchup? Like, what is maybe the position group or concept Tennessee does that's like that could be an issue for NC State?
Well, one of the things I wrote about today after Dave Doran's press conference, and I'm not going to pretend to be a Tennessee expert, but I watched the Iowa game, at that time. I did watch the Tennessee Chattanooga game just to freshen up, what the personnel looks like. And, I think a big key is Dylan Sampson at running back. I think he's a guy that if he sets up 2nd and 4, that's a long day for NC State's defense. So I think even though Nico is going to get all the headlines and the attention, and I'm sure he'll deserve every bit of it, but Sampson, if he runs well, he's going to make the job of the passing game that much easier. Honestly, I did not know all the ins and outs of Tennessee's wide receivers and tight ends. Obviously, a healthy Thornton, a healthy Brew McCoy makes a huge difference to go with the Tulane transfer. So you could see how they have the weapons, and at least for the Iowa game and the Western or UT Chattanooga game, that you could see how Nico plays with poise and usually throws the ball where the receivers catch it in stride. Not a lot of glaring mistakes on his part. Never seems rattled, and he can run when he's pressured. So that part's going to be just fascinating. And, Western Carolina did a little bit of the no huddle. There's been teams in the ACC that do some no huddle, but the way Tennessee does it is just a little more intense, a little faster, a little more oomph behind it. And like I said, I do think NC State has a lot of depth in the secondary, and they'll rotate 6-7 guys at D line. But it'll be interesting to see, and who knows what the temperature will be in Charlotte. But it'll be interesting to see, how they handle that intensity of the no huddle.
A slight twist on that, then. What's the key to success for NC State on the Wolfpack side of things? What do they need to do to come out on top?
Well, Dave Doran will tell you every single year it's all about the turnover battle every time. But I think State has to, I wouldn't say like slow it down, but just kind of play at their own pace. Keep Tennessee's offense off the field. Uh, take advantage of their weapons on offense, because I do think NC State has a talented offense. I think they have weapons. Grayson McCall may not have like the strongest arm in the world. He's not going to whip it all over the place, but he has good timing and good touch. And when he's in sync, he'll make those plays. Like I said, he was literally probably 4 passes away from having a monster game. But that's how it goes. You got to make the simple throws sometimes, and he doesn't make complicated throws, but he makes the simple throws all game long. Usually, that's the beauty of a 6-year senior. Defensively, I just don't know if State could win a shootout. Like, I just don't. But I don't know. That's going to be my big question: is can they slow down? Can they hold, say, Tennessee to less than 28 points? And that's the question that I don't know if they can at this point. Western Carolina showed some weaknesses, yeah, but I don't want to judge everything off of what, an FCS opponent. And I've covered enough college football games. It seems like every game is its own little dynamic. There doesn't seem much carryover from week to week to week. So what they look like one week, they may not look like the next. How much do they try to play possum by not showing certain things? Because why would you want to show them when you could spring them against Tennessee? And I'm sure Volunteers are the same way against Tennessee Chattanooga. There's things that I'm sure they didn't show. But I would be concerned, and I'm sure all Tennessee opponents, if Sampson has that running game going, then it changes a lot of things. Dorn even pointed out that Tennessee was 9th in rushing last year in the country. And because they pass so much, you just don't really think of it that way. But, there's clearly balance to that offense.
That is one of the keys to the offense. It's the pass game is kind of what grabs the headlines when Jalen Hyatt scores 5 touchdowns against Alabama in 22. That's kind of what grabs your attention. But it's a big balance, and Sampson's off to a great start. But maybe some of the depth is different for Tennessee at running back this year. Jalen Wright, draft pick to the Dolphins, and Jabari Small. He's on the Titans practice squad right now. So some guys stepping up behind them, Deshaun Bishop, Cameron Seldon, a lot of young guys as well behind Sampson. But I think line of scrimmage, running back game, I think that's going to be one of the keys to success for both sides of the ball. And we'll see what happens on Saturday. Jacey, thank you, though, so much for hopping on. Make sure you guys go over to the Wolfpack Central, ncstate.rivals.com. I always say, if you want to be like the smartest guy at the tailgate on Saturday, if you want to be sitting there and looking like you know what you're talking about, it's very important to know what the other team is doing, not just what the Vols are doing. So head over to ncstate.rivals.com, figure out everything there is to know about NC State from Jacey. He does a great job over there. They're on Twitter at NC State Rivals as well. Once again, thank you so much, Jacey. Links to everything is in the description. Thank you for watching.